Welcome, everybody. It is about 1 o'clock. Welcome to the Know Before You Go webinar with your advocacy team at NAR. We want to make sure that everybody is good to go on this webinar. If you need a question answered or a comment looked at, you're going to be able to interact with us through the question and answer section here. There will be no unmuting. You have your lovely panelists with you today. You've got your chair of the FPC Advisory Committee, Soccer Chapman Thomas, and Vice President of Advocacy Government Affairs, Joe Harris, and Director of Government Affairs, Brian Rusbolt, and Emily Newman, who is with our Advocacy Communications Group, and Valerie Rivers with RPR. And I am Victoria Givens, Manager, Realtor Mobilization Programs, for those of you that don't know me yet. We're going to go ahead and get started today. This webinar is for all of you who are coming to Capitol Hill next week, and you will join us on May 4th through 9th at our Realtor Legislative meetings. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get this party started. Here we go. Share screen. Deek. All right, everybody. First, we're going to start off with our lobbyist team, Joe Harris and Brian Rusbolt, on the legislative priorities and FPC talking points that we want all of you guys to take to the Hill. Those have been released in your FPC e-packet and flyin.realtor. For those of you that need to brush up, we want to make sure that you are reading and familiarizing yourself with those in advance. And that's what Joe and Ryan are here to talk to us today about. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Victoria. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be with all of you. We're looking forward to seeing you here in Washington, D.C. very, very soon. So I'm going to kick it off to Ryan Rusbolt to start us off on going through the advocacy talking points that we're hoping to hit this year. You'll notice that it's going to be pretty tax heavy, and that's by design. Very important thing is happening next year, and that's the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is going to mean a very mad scramble for a lot of tax provisions that we care about. And then Ryan is done talking about the advocacy priorities. I'll chime in and talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the Hill about the settlement. So without further ado, Ryan Rusbolt, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. So I know you all probably are looking at this and you're wondering, okay, I've seen some of these bills before, because you probably have. Our theme has stayed the same. We're still focusing on housing inventory, housing affordability, and housing accessibility. Joe is absolutely right. They are all very tax heavily focused. Well, we had to think outside the box, and the number one way we can help with the affordability side is to increase inventory. And the way that we can help inventory, increasing that, is through the tax code. So there are a lot of pieces of legislation on here. Actually, every piece of legislation that we're going to be asking are all bipartisan. I just want to take that right now out front. They're fantastic pieces. And the first one is the More Homes on the Market Act. Now, this legislation would amend the tax code to incentivize more homeowners to sell their houses to increase market supply. And what it would do, it would double the capital gains exemption at the sale of a principal residence. So it's currently capped at $250,000 for a single individual selling and $500,000 for a married couple selling. We would ask for that to be doubled and indexed to inflation. This provision has not been changed since 1997. We all know in the housing market, even from right at the beginning of the pandemic, not having anything change in the cap gains exemption just in the last 4 years has been a lot. So this is a huge bill. It's a bipartisan bill, HR 1321, offered by Representatives Jimmy Panetta and Mike Kelly. The second piece of legislation is the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. This legislation would attract private investment dollars by offering tax credits to build and rehab owner-occupied homes in predominantly low to moderate income communities. It is a little bit smaller of the next bill that I will actually be talking about, but it is a very good way to increase private dollars into affordable units in communities. The third ask is the affordable house. I'm sorry, and that is HR 3940. The third bill is the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, and that is HR 1557, or excuse me, S 1557 in the Senate, and HR 3238. Apparently, I'm not good with numbers today, but math was not my strongest suit. But this bill would expand and strengthen the low-income housing tax credit, which is LIHTC. It's the country's most successful affordable housing program that we had. We've had some success on trying to get this expanded in a House bill, but this is a standalone provision that we're asking members of Congress to sign on and show their support. The purpose for expanding LIHTC would also, as I mentioned in the previous bill, would be to encourage private sector to invest in new construction and rehabilitation of homes. Those will be the three major asks on legislation we have. Of course, there's a lot that maybe your member of Congress is working on, and that will obviously be an area where if you ever have questions about what they are focused on, you know, Joe and I, we can help out on that. But those are going to be the three main asks for right now. Some additional pieces that we want to bring up is a very big one for all realtors is to preserve the 199A qualified business income deduction. Why do we care about this? Well, this deduction allows realtors to maintain their 20% pass-through deduction when filing their taxes. This is a very, very big benefit for independent contractors. So we want to make sure that this is preserved, and this was supposed to have parity with the corporate Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But the problem is this provision expires in 2025. So we want Congress to try to extend this and keep this benefit for small business owners. We also want to support and preserve the ability to keep 1031 like-kind exchanges readily available. Obviously, everybody in this call knows how important of a tax deferment tool in real estate this is. So ask your member of Congress, even if there's nothing to really sign on to, let them know this is a huge tool. It has constantly been used for in the past as a pay-for tax bills. We want to protect this. This is very important for the real estate community, and letting your member of Congress know that would be vital to keeping this program to the point where it is. The last bullet point here is to the SALT cap, the state and local tax deduction cap. In TCJA, it was capped at $10,000, whether you were married or whether you were a single individual. Well, we look at that as a marriage penalty. So if you're filing separately, it's $10,000. If you're filing jointly, it's still $10,000. We have been looking to fix that, whether it's doubling it or increasing that cap. That is something that we support. We'll leave it at that. Congress has a bunch of different ideas about it, but we do think that that is somewhat unfair. Another thing that you'll probably all get, well, this is also a expiring provision in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So Congress may not be able to have enough votes to cap it, or they may just completely remove the cap. We're unsure. All we know is from our perspective is that having this as a marriage penalty is not an ideal situation, especially in some areas that are a little bit more higher cost than others. So those right there, as I mentioned, they are all tax, but it is imperative that we make sure that our members of Congress know how the tax system can help real estate, how it can help people get into homes, how it can make it more affordable by increasing inventory through the tax code. These are all very important provisions that we need to make sure that we hit this year and mid-year. With that, I will send it back over to Joe, because I know that there are some questions on what happens if we get a little bit of a tangent in the middle of the meeting and get off of what our points are and some of the recent real estate news. So Joe, I'll kick it back to you.
Thanks, Ryan. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the settlement, DOJ, all the obvious news and media reports that are out there. Over the past few weeks, we've all had to navigate sort of next steps following that announcement of the settlement. I think it's important to start off by saying that our advocacy team has continued to be very aggressive about meeting with Congress Veteran Affairs Agency, FHFA, the GSEs, correcting the record about the future commissions and offers of compensation, that they are not prohibited. And when appropriate, we've also been requesting clarification about areas where there is uncertainty. One example of that is whether offers of compensation are going to count towards a buyer's interested party contribution, FPC allotment. And we recently heard back from FHA, Fannie and Freddie. We confirmed that they have not. But our message has been very clear and very simple from the very beginning. The recent media reports of NAR's demise have been greatly exaggerated. Yes, we're facing the challenges of a changing landscape, but we are committed to addressing the real threat of the future of homeownership, and that's the devastating lack of inventory, and it starts there. High interest rates, the non-mortgage costs that keep going up, like property taxes and utilities and home insurance premiums. They're all driving up the overall cost of homeownership. And I think it's so important when you're going into these meetings to strike that optimistic tone of looking to the future, understanding that there are challenges, but realtors adjust. If there's nothing that we're better at, it's at adjusting to changing conditions. So that's been our message right out of the gates, that there are bigger threats to homeownership out there that we don't want to take our eyes off the ball of. Now, when we have faced specific questions from lawmakers and staffers, they mainly want to know what's going on, what does it mean for the industry going forward, how can they help? These are all things that we've heard as we've made our way around the Hill. It is okay, and it is expected, and I hope that you will all let them know that you do not have a crystal ball regarding how this settlement is going to impact the real estate industry. Nobody really knows. We are committed, however, to minimizing its impact in areas that we do know there's going to be some need for clarification. The military veterans, that's the most obvious. First time, low to moderate income, minority home buyers, that's another area that we know there's going to be some impact. But do not play economists. We don't know, and that's okay. That's what we say. But when the opportunity does arise to talk about veteran borrowers, for example, they're prohibited by the VA from compensating their agents directly. This is an area that we know needs immediate attention. We and other organizations have met with the VA. We've urged them to address this issue. But we've also met with the chairs and ranking members of both the House and Senate VA committees to explain the situation, to let them know that this puts veteran buyers immediately at a disadvantage. They're going to be forced to forego professional representation, which is what nobody wants. They're going to lose out on a property, and the inventory is already low. So we understand and know that this is one of the biggest issues that needs immediate impact. We're currently working on getting a letter from Congress to the VA asking that this rule be changed. There's also the potential for legislation to be passed, but this is another area where we know there's going to be an impact with this settlement.
So there were a couple of questions, in the chat, just if you could address quickly.
Okay.
If on this, should they be giving we're going to have a leave behind of the letter, of the VA letter, should they be handing that as a leave behind? And on some of these other issues that Ryan addressed that didn't have bill numbers, are there sponsors or leaders like for SALT or for the 199A or that we should be mentioning, or we should just mention them when they're up there on the Hill, just mention them more generically?
Yeah. If there are no specific bill numbers to the legislation, it's really important to talk about them generally. For a lot of these issues, there may be multiple bills that we don't necessarily want to push a single bill, for example. So in that situation, we want to make sure that the issue itself, the policy issue itself, is front and center for members and staff as you're making the rounds. And what was the other question? About
Oh, just if we're gonna, one thing to clarify, I guess, for everyone is that your talking points will be leave behinds at the FPC roundtable, at the FPC salons, in your lounge. You'll get your talking points, hard copies, as well as that VA letter. And I think they're wondering whether that VA letter is just something for them to reference or they should be leaving it behind.
yeah, that's just something to reference, just the issue in general of the VA, and that we're working through trying to get this resolved through Congress. That's just for your information and for you to pass along to the members. So ultimately, you know, when you're asked about, if you're asked about the DOJ settlement, I think it's important to remain focused on what we're doing on the advocacy side: housing affordability, availability, fair housing, obviously the tax bills and updating the tax code that Ryan referred to. Also talk about protecting your independent contractor status. That's another issue that we've been working very hard to make sure that members know about, that this is a fight that's ongoing. But it's also a perfect opportunity to discuss what's happening in your home market. And ultimately, that's what members and staff really care about, like what's happening back home. And a lot of the questions we get are about that. But let's say a member of staff wants more detailed information. They have complicated in the weeds questions about the lawsuit, the settlement. Please refer them to any of our staff. We can follow up with meetings. You know, we can make sure that we have Katie Johnson or anybody else who is appropriate to staff that meeting. And we have had those requests. But for realtor legislative meetings, it's all about focusing on the housing inventory, the interest rates, those things that are really going to impact not only our industry, but the economy as a whole. And we want to make sure we keep the focus on that for this year.
Joe, is there, as far as the reception on the Hill for some of these issues, it looks like what we're wondering here is anything a sticky wicket? Like, is one more moving than the other? What was the sort of temperature of this VA letter when it was received by the receivers? What can you guys
Ryan,
give a little bit of
Yeah,
color
I
on
would-
like where we stand on these things so that these guys are
I would be
going
more than
or not
happy
going?
to jump in, Victoria. So I went in and met with Chairman Bost, who is the current chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee in the House, and they are meeting with the Veterans Affairs Committee. But their initial thoughts when we met with them was, "Wow, this is not okay." We went into it saying, "Look, this has been a longstanding campaign of NAR and our members that we want veterans to have more choice in the home buying process. We want them to have the ability to own a second home, to waive certain contingencies, to negotiate prices, and then also hire representation if they choose to." Currently, the Veteran Affairs Committee, the Veteran Affairs Administration does not allow veteran buyers, if they're using the VA home loan, to pay for compensation. We think that the Veterans Affairs Committee should give them the ability to hire someone if they choose to. That's all, not requiring it. Nothing on that. And they're like, "Well, that makes sense. Why hasn't it not been done?" Well, this is something we have been asking for a very long time, but with cooperative compensation, they never felt the need to change it. They are running a lot of internal traps. They're having conversations with the Veteran Affairs Committee on both sides, both Senate and House, but it is received well. It is received very well. It is all about veterans' choice in the home buying process. When somebody is transitioning from active service to civilian lifestyle, we will try to do everything that we can possibly do to get them into a home to transition to civilian lifestyle. So the committees have been pretty good about these issues. We have been also speaking with the Armed Services Committee and also the Military Construction and Veteran Affairs Committee on the appropriations as well. We have been going different avenues with these letters, and we've even had offices proactively reach out to us to try to legislate. The Veterans Affairs Administration, I believe, will make the change. We are going to do everything to force that change to happen quickly. We are going to put the pressure on members of Congress, and this is exactly why when you guys go up and speak with your members in 2 weeks, a week and a half, this is going to add pressure for them to want to get more involved in it. We hope there's a lot of things that it takes time, but we are hoping to have a letter that we can actually get the FPCs to ask for, and another ask, which it is on that one pager, but to get them to sign on to a VA letter. We're trying to make it bipartisan, and I think that we'll probably get there. It's just going to take let's change this sentence, let's change this, that, the other. We're kind of trying to go this back and forth right now. So I do encourage everyone to make sure that they do attend the FPC salons, because we will probably have up-to-date information at that point on where things will be. But it has been received very well. And long story short.
Yeah, and I'm reading through some of these other questions. One, will we support eliminating marriage penalty separately from SALT? We do. That's our policy position. We absolutely support elimination of the SALT cap. Given the political realities, it seems like the policy that gets the most bipartisan support is addressing the marriage penalty. There may be some wiggle room in there on that $20,000 cap number. It could be 30,000, it could be 40,000. It really does depend on how that issue, in addition to all the issues we care about, the 199A pass-through deduction, 1031 like-kind exchange, it really does matter what the cost is for all these other provisions that are going to be in the tax reform. And it's unclear, what that number is going to be in terms of how big the bill is going to be, what the cost is going to be. Obviously, a lot depends on who's controlling the Congress, which party's controlling the Congress, which party's controlling the White House. But that's why we talk about these issues now and give them color. So we have been talking about them from, policy perspective, from a 10,000-foot level, and the importance of now having the Hill meetings is for you all to give them some color, to talk about the importance they're going to have on not only the economy, but also the real estate industry. And so we are always going to support whichever bill is going to be moving or has the best chance to move when it comes to SALT or any other issue. Since there are no bill numbers on the last three issues, do we need a lead sponsor or a co-sponsor? Again, on some of these issues, Felton, some of these bills are multiple bills that address some of these issues, and we, don't choose one over the other. We like the idea of folks supporting this legislation and the idea behind it. So if in your conversations, you get reaction or comment from the member or the staff that says, this is something we'd be interested in supporting, or, we're actually hoping to work on a bill like this in the next Congress. Those are really important conversations and comments for us to know here on the lobby team, as we work with Evan and other folks on the policy team to sort of craft our next move with regard to tax reform. 2025, December 2025 may seem a long way away, but the conversations and all the things that are going into putting this bill together are already starting, and we at NAR are going to hopefully get some nice intel from you all about, not only about the bills that you see here, but also about some of the issues that your own members care about. What keeps them up at night, and those sorts of things. That's some of the feedback we're hoping to get from these Hill visits.
Joe, I think what I'm going to do is stop you right there, and you and Ryan can kind of poke around in the chat and answer
Absolutely.
some questions, and we'll move forward, and we can circle back to you guys if you want to lay any clarifying points on as we wrap up towards the end there. Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about how we sort of decided on these points. Emily Newman, folks.
Thanks, Victoria. And hey, everybody. I appreciate Victoria giving me just a couple minutes here on the agenda to highlight a couple communications tools for you all as we're going into the legislative meetings. And the very first one that I want to highlight for you, it just dropped. It's fresh off the presses as of this morning. Just went live on our website. We put together this year a recorded webinar. We called it Shaping NAR's 2024 Policy Priorities. And some of you may have attended in the past Zoom meetings where we've presented the findings of our state and local policy priorities survey. A number of our GADs and AEs take that survey at the end of each year, and they basically tell us what they're anticipating will be their priorities for the coming year. But the piece we've always missed is we do take all of that feedback, and it really does shape how we then determine what we are going to advocate for, but we haven't always been great about communicating that connection. So this year, we created this webinar where Shannon did an interview with Joe Good, who is our pollster who conducts that survey for us each year. But then we transitioned it over to how does that translate into the policy priorities that we are advocating for on the Hill this year at RLM. So Brian Green, our VP of Policy Advocacy, had some conversations with his subject matter experts on his team. Evan Lydiard does a really deep dive into some of these tax proposals that we're going to be talking about on the Hill. And then Nia Duggins joined Brian as well to dive more deeply into the independent contractor issue, as well as this VA buyers issue that we've been talking about. And then our very own Joe Harris wraps it up and gives a plug for flyin.realtor, which I saw some people promoting in the chat. That is where you can find all of the talking point resources that are available leading up to RLM. So we would love it if you would, number one, watch the webinar, and if you could help us share it among members on your social media. This is a really great opportunity. Obviously, you all get to join us here for this Know Before You Go webinar where we talk in depth about these issues. But this video is then meant to help all of our members better understand what we're advocating for on the Hill and how we arrived at those priorities. So it's currently listed at flyin.realtor, and we would love it if you would take a watch and share it. And then going forward on this idea of our social channels, hopefully you're all aware, but if you're not, we recently restarted our Realtor Party social channels so that we could have a social hub for our advocacy efforts. So just in case you haven't joined us on those channels yet, NAR Realtor Party is the handle on Facebook, Instagram, and X or Twitter. So when you're at the legislative meetings, the official hashtag for the meetings is hashtag NAR Legislative. But I would ask, especially when you're on the Hill, if you could also post and use the hashtag Realtor Party. We will be watching for that hashtag throughout the day. We would love to share and amplify what you're doing, any photos that you have with your members, takeaways from your conversations. We would love to just have a really comprehensive look at what our day was like on the Hill, especially knowing that everyone's really excited to get back up to the Hill this year. So if you could communicate that hashtag as well, that helps us find your posts and make sure that we can share them. And then feel free to use it throughout the conference, of course. We would love to share all of your content. So just wanted to flag that for you all, a couple new tools that we have available. And that's really it, Victoria. Thanks for giving me just a couple minutes to share that.
Thanks, Emily. That's awesome. Yes, we are back up and running on Hill meetings this year, and that's a nice transition for what I'm going to talk about is how to behave when we go up there. I think one thing that I want to note about what Emily said on hashtag Realtor Party, the night of the FPC 50th anniversary reception, we're going to be showing a really lovely slideshow of all the work you guys have been doing over the past year, meeting with your members of Congress. And if you take pictures that day on the Hill, tag them in your social media posts, or you can put them in your FPC field reports, and we will have those live, like quickly uploaded to that slideshow during the reception on Tuesday night. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that you can do that through the hashtag on your social media or through your field reports, and then we'll have your pretty pictures when we can all see each other and what we did on Hill Day. So let's talk a little bit. I want to acknowledge that we haven't been on the Hill in about 3 years in the significant way that was sort of our tried and true brand of yesteryear that some veteran FPCs really remember. And a lot of you guys are new. We have new federal political coordinators, new GADs, new AEs, that this is really their first fresh approach to Capitol Hill with the realtors. And so let's go through a little bit of learning on how to conduct ourselves and what we expect as the gold standard of NAR on the Hill. It's really important that you all prepare before your meeting. And what does that look like? How many people are going to be in your meeting? You know, we're not any longer being prescriptive about what that looks like. Talk to your Hill office. Some Hill offices like 5 people max in a meeting, and then that's what you need to do. Some Hill offices don't mind if you bring the entire city of Austin, Texas to Lloyd Doggett's office. He doesn't mind, right? He loves that show of force, but be sure to communicate how many people so they have the right space for you. Don't feel chagrined if you're standing in the hallway with your member of Congress, which we'll get to that, or a staffer, but just prepare in advance and know what you're going to talk about. That looks like who is talking about what talking point. Think about what Ryan talked about and what Joe talked about earlier today, and think to yourself, what do I have to offer in this meeting that's going to make the most impact? I like to tell people, these members of Congress and staffers, they have 30 plus meetings a day, and you want to be the person that they go home at night and talk to their family about. That was the meeting that they remembered. And usually you do that with having a really good story to make your point. If you're just reading off your talkers and it's in one ear and out the other. So really pick the one that measures up for you and your district and your first time home buyers, and tell that story. You can make the point that we want all these other bills co-sponsored and that, but spend your time making that point and decide who's going to tell that story in your meeting. And be sure to touch base with your NAR lobbyist and political director about where you're meeting, when you're meeting, so they can join you. We're trying to keep a running list, not necessarily a lobbyist in every meeting or anything like that. That's absolutely impossible, but we just want to know what's happening when. And so this is just a fresh reminder of who your political directors are. And so you can send, if you haven't communicated who you're meeting with and when on that day, if you could go ahead and email that to your NAR staff member on this map, then we can keep a good running list of what's happening when. That's really helpful to us. So when you walk into that meeting that we're just talking about telling your story in, you want to be sure to present your business card up front. They're not going to totally remember everybody in the room. And it's really nice when you're in a Hill meeting, if you've never been to the Hill before, what happens is that legislative assistant or legislative director is going to take those cards and they're going to lay them out on the table, probably in the order that you're sitting around the table, right? So that person, this is just how they function in their job, right? It's not anything personal to you. They really want to be able to say, hey, Brian, I really liked what you said about this. It's a way for them to connect with you. And if you don't have your business card, it makes it a little bit trickier. You'll wear your FPC name badge, of course, if you have it, but go ahead and just let them know who you are and be relatable. If they ask a question that you don't understand, I think this is another really important point. Know what you don't know. We don't want anybody spinning tails, about anything. Just say, let me get back to you, or I can put Joe Harris in touch with you, Ryan, your lobbyist, your political director, me, anybody can get back with them if they need further. If you're talking about NAR research, which is another thing that we want you guys up there talking about, we have a really amazing research for these members of Congress to use us as a resource. And you'll learn about that in your talking points as well, of exactly what we want to go up there right now. So when you're finished with your meeting, be sure to make sure you know who you met with so you can write them a thank you note, and give any of your leave behinds to, you'll want to bring something for you to look at, but something for the staffer or the member of Congress to go home and really noodle on, and thank them for anything. If they've said in the meeting, oh yeah, I'd really like to co-sponsor that bill. I mean, that's fantastic. Let us know immediately. We want you to file your field report and tell us about how that meeting went. Send them, tell us how it went, and then send them a note of support. Hashtag, I met with Congressman Lloyd Daga and it was fantastic. He's the most amazing. He was so hospitable to us. They love that. That looks really good everywhere and it really makes us look good. All of your I have this FPC tools hashtag here, or website here. All of the things I'm talking about these are available in your FPC e-packet, which we're going to get to in a minute. But what I'm going to do right now is turn it over to Soccer and talk about, that's on Hill Day, everything I just talked about. And Soccer is going to talk a little bit about what's happening the rest of the week. I know we want to stay on time, so I'm going to turn it right over to you, Soccer. Thanks.
Okie dokie. So next slide, please. So hopefully you are getting there. First of all, hello, everyone. It looks like we have more than half of our FPCs here, which is really awesome. So hopefully you're getting to DC on May 4th, because first thing May 5th, we're going to have the Federal Legislative and Political Forum at 8:30 in the morning. All of the room numbers and all of that can be found on the schedule, and you can also download the Realtor Legislative Meeting app, and you can make a schedule for yourself. So I don't have all of the room numbers and all of that. And you can also go to legislative.realtor. So 8:30 on May 5th. That is on Sunday. And then at 9:30, we have the FPC Lobbyist Salon. And then also on May 5th, we have the FPC Roundtable, and that's from 1:45 to 3:45. We have the Advocacy Scoop. So May 5th is going to be a very, very, very busy day. So Sunday, go to church at 7 a.m. if you're going, and then just come on and do all of your advocacy stuff. And then we have FPC Advisory Committee meeting. Yay, our meeting is on May 6th. That is Monday from 10 until 12. We're going to have an ice cream social at the trade show on Monday from 1 until 3. And then Congressional Hill visits are May 7th. That is on Tuesday from 9 until 5. There are some of you, and I am one of them, whose member of Congress is traveling on that day. So my guy won't be there until late on Tuesday. So I'm doing my actual Hill visit on Wednesday. And there were a couple of you who were like me, whose person is traveling and they won't be in DC until late on Tuesday. If that is the case, we understand, and just get in front of them as soon as you possibly can on Wednesday. And then we have our much awaited FPC 50th anniversary reception. Yay! Okay, I must admit, I was looking forward to donning some wonderful purple sparkly dress and have all this wonderful everything that we had planned, but it's not a good look in the year where we are having to pay a whole bunch of gazillions of dollars because of the settlement. We decided to pare it down and do our reception. It's going to be a reception on steroids, but it's not going to be the grand event that we had planned because it just doesn't look good. President Sears caught flack for President Circle being such a phenomenal event, and everybody, oh my God, they're spending so much money. How are they spending all that money? They need to save it for the settlement. They say they don't, all of the things. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. And then we have, of course, the board of directors meeting on Thursday at 9 a.m. So as your person, I'm going to give you my phone number right now. Many of you have it. Call me, text me. I will help you. I will meet you. I will even attend some of your hill visits with you if you want. Since my guy's not going to be there, I'll come with you. My number is 512-784-7150. Again, my cell number, and I have it all the time, 512-784-7150. And if you're in DC and you're turned around and freaked out and, oh my God, where am I? I'll find you. I will help you. It's going to be fine. I think that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Soccer. You guys should use that, man. She's amazing. She's amazing and a really, really wonderful mentor if you're feeling a little nervous. I want to just back a little bit on a few things on the anniversary reception. Soccer's right. We had to scale it back a bit. This reception is for FPCs, current FPCs. Now, if you're a former FPC, we're not going to turn you away, right? If you've been serving for 20 years and your member retired last year, we're not saying, but we are no longer making this a congressional reception. If you've already invited your member of Congress, that's fine. You don't need to uninvite them. In the past, we've always mentioned it to Congress. Oh, come on by, swing by, have a cocktail. And we may get one or two, but we are not pushing this with Congress, right? This is no longer as big of an event. We don't have the space that we had before, and it's not something we're really making you all the focus. That's another reason we're doing the ice cream social. And what that looks like on the trade show floor, what we're doing is inviting all of you guys, if you can come, as many of you come down to the trade show floor and get ice cream, we're inviting other realtor members to come meet you, learn about the program, honor you. Really, there are going to be, you're going to notice all throughout the week, there are a lot of surprises in the works for all of you to really honor everything that you guys have done over the past 50 years and really currently in this transition period. I mean, you all are the most amazing grassroots team in Washington, and we want to show you that love. It may not be a huge party, but we're going to make sure that everybody walks away feeling really feeling the love, right? Because you all deserve it very much. I'll say at the roundtable, the agenda is available in your FPC e-packet, as is legislative forum. We have Congressman Gowdy and former Congressman Joe Cunningham coming to speak at forum, and we're going to have a nice discussion with Rich Thau during FPC roundtable, and a panel of your veteran FPCs are going to give a nice long talk about Hill. We're going to start it off with Hill visits, stories that they've had. If you're still feeling a little overwhelmed about going to the Hill, this is going to be a really good time to talk to your colleagues and peers about what it is to involve your team. What's it like when your member of Congress is totally against what you're saying? How do you handle not getting rolled by your member? I mean, those kinds of things that's what we're going to be talking about during roundtable. It's going to be fantastic, and we'll honor the Meritorious Service Award winners for 2024. So turning to the e-packet, which we've talked a lot about, this is the link to go get all of that stuff. That's your talking points. The one pager, the stuff that's on FlyOn.Realtor is just the beginning. That's for everybody else. You FPCs have your own special little pocket on the internet that we have put together that includes a map of the lounge. The lounge is pimped out this year. You guys have pillows and couches and cupcakes. There might be a queso fountain. I don't know. Popcorn machine for sure at FPC Roundtable. I'm telling you, I'm not even going to give away the surprises, but there's so many fun things. So all of that map of the Capitol Hill complex, the letters, the economic materials, those leave behinds. We're going to talk a little bit to Valerie here in a second about how to just what an RPR report is for those of you who have never run one before. All of that, restaurant recommendations from your NAR lobby team, that's all available to you in your e-packet, and that is up and running. We'll put that in the FPC newsletter tomorrow, so no one misses it. We'll link it in the hub. It's all, you're just about to drink from the fire hose all over again. One thing we hope that you guys are going to do, we're going to launch during the FPC roundtable on the 4th, is your One Huddle Hill trivia. Now, this trivia is going to be over all of your talking points. It's going to talk about the do's and don'ts of going to Capitol Hill. We'll talk a bit, have a question or two on what you should say around the settlement. And whoever wins, we're going to start the game just before FPC roundtable on the 5th and go through Wednesday evening, and the top three folks on the leaderboard are each going to get $50 worth of swag at the realtor store, whatever you want. If you want a Yeti cup, if you want a sweater vest, whatever you want, you get it. But you have to be in first, second, or third place. And this is how you play. For those of you that don't have One Huddle, go ahead and screenshot this, because we want everybody's app working during roundtable so no one feels like they're getting left on their back foot. I'm going to turn it over, Valerie, to you real quick, because I know you have some updates fresh off the presses today. Thanks.
I do. And we're going to be really quick. Most of you are very familiar with the reports that you run from RPR. They combined the NAR congressional district reports with some really rich, robust data that includes information on each district, such as census, demographics, spending, income, employment information, really robust reports that are pulled from your RPR account. Like Victoria said, we are in the process as we speak of updating all of that information. So there's going to be updated information. We've had a few folks say, hey, some of this data is from 2022. So we're making sure that we get that 2023 data loaded. So watch for an email from me, most likely coming to you tomorrow morning, which will remind you to run your report and provide instructions on how to do that. It's a relatively lengthy report, but the representatives seem to really enjoy it. It's a nice leave behind, but it's great to run it before you go to DC. So I just want to remind you all to watch for that email from me tomorrow, and then you'll have all of my contact information, my email, my cell phone number for anything that I can do to help you either before you come to DC or once you are there. So thanks for the time, Victoria. I appreciate it. And
Thanks, Valerie.
Sure
Yeah, we'll
thing.
look forward to it. There will be a great way for you guys to run your RPR reports. Usually Valerie is very accessible in the FPC lounge. She is around to help you guys if you're really struggling with how to do that. And she's always at FPC roundtable and kind of bopping around the salons if you need to get in touch with Valerie. And before I turn this over to Brad Fitch at the Congressional Management Foundation, who's going to go a little bit more in the weeds. Oh, are you there? Did someone say something? Okay, sorry. But I just wanted to thank everyone. I know we changed this webinar to a different day. So if you are watching this on the recording, and all of you who were able to join today, we had a really great showing. We want you to know from your advocacy team that we appreciate your flexibility throughout this entire process. We're really excited to see you next week, and we look forward to making a huge impact on the Hill and really getting that realtor voice heard. Brad Fitch from the Congressional Management Foundation is my absolute favorite person to team up with and train with. He is going to give you the second half of this webinar on mapping your congressional assets and really making that impact that we're talking about on the Hill next week. So Brad, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow you, my friend, to share yours. Hi,
Great.
Brad.
Thank you and welcome to such a large crowd of FPCs. I'm really excited. My biggest audience
You're
this
so
year.
popular, Brad. It's
Yeah,
you.
over 365 people. That's great. For those of you who don't remember, I'm Brad Fitch, President and CEO of the Congressional Management Foundation. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, has two missions: to improve congressional operations and the institution of Congress, and also to help citizens have a better understanding and relationships with their Congress. Our theory of change as a nonprofit is if we have a smarter and better Congress, if we have more engaged citizens, we'll have a stronger democracy. And we couldn't operate and advance our mission without the help of the National Association of Realtors. So we really welcome and appreciate our partnership. What we're going to talk about today is mapping your congressional assets. Throughout this training course, you're going to get a lot of the basics, blocking and tackling of being a terrific citizen advocate. But when you talk about marshaling your assets, meaning looking at the information that you have about your district, about your business, about your political and economic footprint, and then also considering your network that you can apply to this. We're really going to the Graduate School of Citizen Engagement. I only know of 3 other organizations, trade associations, or nonprofits in America that actually try to do what we're going to talk about here today. So let me walk you through this program and go ahead and throw in questions in the chat or the Q&A box. The first, I'm going to start and end with a quote. My first quote I'm going to start with is a politician from the last century, John Connally, who was the longtime governor of Texas, who said this: "You would be wise to invest at least 10% of your time in politics, because I can assure you, politicians are investing 100% of their time in your business." It's very clear that the full-time job of politicians at the state, federal, and local level is to make public policy. And sometimes that public policy helps you, and sometimes it does not. And so you have to be aware at all times and be ready to get involved in public policy. The research that the Congressional Management Foundation has done shows that your involvement, and even the involvement of just a few more friends, has a tremendous impact on their decision-making process. We did a survey of congressional staff, and we asked this question: if your member has not arrived at a firm decision on an issue, approximately how many email messages from people who represent many constituents, such as an organization leader, elected official, or business owner, does it take for your office to consider taking the action requested? And what we found, the top answer at 55% was less than 10. That's right. If you and 4 or 5 of your other colleagues in your business, in your community, in the real estate profession, communicate and send an email around the same time to your House member and to your senators, you will get their attention. They will pay attention to you. A lot of people think that Congress isn't listening, but they actually are. And you want to think creatively about who you want to get involved in this effort. So when you think about those people who are assets in your network, you think of your own business and you think about your customers or your clients. And some people aren't comfortable asking them to get involved. Some people are. But you certainly have employees or colleagues who are working in your business. You may even have product suppliers. Are there carpenters? Are there lawn companies? Are there other people that might be affected by the same issues that you're being affected by? Is your community also affected by these? This is why we want you thinking. When you think about your assets, you want to think creatively about your network, and not just yourself and your family and maybe your business, but in other ways. So we're going to talk first of all the value of building a network. Case studies in advocacy and grasstops involvement, building your assets and your network. And Victoria wanted us also to just do a quick refresher on the top 10 tips for successful meetings with elected officials. So I'm going to throw a few just a reminders. She already did you some of the do's and don'ts. I'll give you a little more context to this based on the research that we've done with members of Congress and staff. All right, to kick things off, let's talk about the value of a network, and we're going to go back to our congressional staff survey and show you the answer to this question. When your member is trying to develop new ideas for issues and legislation, how important are the following activities? And what we found is at the top of the list are things like meeting with interest groups representatives. That was defined as a representative from an organization, nonprofit, or company in the district or state. Meeting with constituents or meeting with community leaders. This is what they're looking for, is they're looking for those opportunities to interact with people like you. They're going to give them ideas of legislation that they should be working on. One member of Congress said it this way: the most effective way to influence a lawmaker is for a constituent to talk to a legislator about how the policy will affect a particular person or group. Another way of looking at this is looking at the way lawmakers and staff make their decisions and who influences them. And we got an answer to a really granular question that we asked in one of our staff surveys a few years ago. When making a recommendation to your boss on a vote or co-sponsorship, how important are the following in your decision-making process? This is the retail level of congressional decision-making, folks. The co-sponsorship or a vote, that's it. That's what really is members of Congress operating and using their power. And so this is what we found out is position of leadership, only 21%. 2 out of 10 staffers would say position of leadership. One of the myths out there exists because of Hollywood and because of mainstream media is that members of Congress are just led through the nose by their leadership. And certainly there are ideological issues where you're not going to see a lot of variance between leadership and membership. Guns, immigration, abortion, those are very polarizing issues. But everything else, they have a lot of flexibility to do. I know you want to believe that members of Congress are going to win or lose their next election based on their position on flood insurance renewals. Sorry, folks, ain't gonna happen. That means they have a lot of flexibility because leadership isn't looking at them when they're looking at housing issues or real estate issues or some of these tax issues. The position of other members in the delegation does matter as well. The position of their committee or ranking member is the term for the leading minority member of the committee. That's the Democrats in the House and the Republicans in the Senate. But the number one answer of what they say is important to them, or very important, when making a recommendation for a co-sponsorship or a vote is the position of key groups with constituents in our district. By far, that's the top answer. Now, let's talk a little bit about sort of classifying your network and where people fall in. And I'll put them in two categories, what's considered grassroots and grass tops. And what's the difference between these two groups? Well, a grassroots person may not have a direct connection to a legislator, may not know them. A grass tops person may have a connection. It may be through a colleague. It may be through their kids going to the same school, but there's some kind of connection that elevates them in the eyes of the lawmaker. The grassroots person may not know the legislator directly, but they may, on the grass tops level, have a pre-existing, positive, and cordial relationship. However casual, politicians are going to take that relationship very seriously. And finally, a grassroots person is unlikely to have multiple connections, but a grass tops person may influence more than one other person, 2 or 3, 5, or maybe even their entire small business could be influential to them. So keep in mind, you're looking for the grass tops people in your network, people that may have a pre-existing relationship with the lawmaker or just be elevated a little higher than others. And let me just give you a data point, because I know many of you FPCs already have pre-existing relationships with lawmakers. I was working with another group, top level advocacy group in the United States, nonprofit, and they had their grass tops people classified in their database on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest. And I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. I was talking to the political director. What qualifies somebody for being a 1? And he said, that's somebody who can get a member of Congress to return their phone call in 1 hour. That's the holy grail, folks. That's where you want to go for, is you want to get that level, that where you're texting your member of Congress. And if you don't have that relationship, trust me, you can get there. And I've worked with many different groups, and they've gotten to the point where they're either texting the chief of staff, the district director, or the member of Congress themselves. Now, let me give you a case study that demonstrates how powerful constituents and grass tops constituents can be. And this is a story involving a former congressman from Michigan, Dave Camp. Dave Camp in 2014 was chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, one of the most powerful committees that is in office, except when you want to pass a tax bill and the president of the United States is a member of the other party. And then you know you're not going to get your tax bill passed. But Dave Camp knew eventually major tax reform would come into existence. And he wanted to kind of lay down a marker. And he knew if he created a comprehensive tax bill, that might be the building block for what eventually became law. And you're going to learn in just a minute, Congressman Camp was right. So what he did is he decided to draft a comprehensive tax reform act in 2014, even though Barack Obama was president, because he wanted to make a difference. Well, during the time that this was going on, I ran into a friend of mine who works on Ways and Means in the hallway of the Longworth building. And I basically said, hey, you know, I never worked on a major tax bill when I was on Capitol Hill. I spent 13 years here, but never got that much into a major tax bill. I asked him a little bit what it was like. And I said, do you talk to all these outside groups and identify, you know, what their beef is or what they're complaining or what they want? And he said, oh, sure, we talk to everybody. They're subject matter experts. We have to understand the impact of our decisions on groups, and they represent millions and millions of constituents. And then he said something that surprised me. He said, we then cut off the lobbying community 2 weeks before the release of the draft. Meaning they've got to write the bloody bill, right? And they can't be answering lobbyist calls right up to the point of release. They got to get down to it. So they don't talk to lobbyists 2 weeks before they drop, in this case, major comprehensive tax legislation involving billions and billions of dollars. So my follow-up question went like this. What if a representative camp constituent, like a small business owner, wanted to talk to you? Would you take their call during this 2-week blackout period? And the answer was, of course. The most famous, well-paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. couldn't get their call returned during that 2-week period, but a real estate agent from Flint, Michigan could. That also tells you, by the way, something else I think we talked about in the last program, and we certainly will talk about in the final program after the election. Where you live matters. Who represents you is a really big deal. We might have some people on the call here today from Fort Worth, Texas. If we do, my condolences. You're a member of Congress. Kay Granger just resigned as being chair of the Appropriations Committee. We might have some people on this call here from Oklahoma. Congratulations. You are now some of the most powerful constituents in America because Tom Cole from Oklahoma is the new chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. One of the most, I would say, third most powerful position, maybe fourth when you consider the president. Fourth most powerful person in Washington is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee because they have the most power to do the most work and have, frankly, the least amount of accountability to anybody other than their constituents. By the way, just to wrap up this case study, this is how it ended. In a Washington Post editorial, it shows you here, and this was posted after the comprehensive bill passed, that Camp had proposed dropping the top corporate rates. This is exactly what happened in the final bill. So, happy ending for Mr. Camp. What his strategy actually did work, and he was able to have a significant impact on our tax code, even though he knew he wasn't going to get the bill passed. All right, let's talk a little bit about building your assets and your network. First thing you want to do is you want to think about what your network or other people who have like-minded views as you are in your industry would want to get involved. And basically, they're going to want to know first the why. Why am I interested in this? Answering that with the word because and what comes afterwards is one of the most important words in the English language. And the why might be because it's in our industry's best interest or because it's the right thing to do. The what, they specifically want to know what you want them to do. Is it make a phone call? Is it come to a meeting in the district? Is it help set up a photo op for a lawmaker that is going to be doing a site visit? But you got to be very specific so they know what their involvement's going to be. This is where you're going to start facing your first resistance, right? Because people may not want to do that much, but you'd be surprised. They may want to do a little bit. How are they going to do that? What resources are you going to be able to provide? What advice are you going to give them? Holding their hand as they go through this process working with you. And it's really important to deliver the feedback to you. As Victoria stated, you've got to get form backs to the national office. You've got to give that feedback to them when you have an interaction with the lawmaker. Now, when you consider your network and people in it, I want you to rate the relationship that individual you're talking to has with a lawmaker at the state or federal level, or specifically the federal level. What skills do they have? One of the things I've really enjoyed in working with the National Association of Realtors is you're very good communicators. It's not so shocking. When I work with the civil engineers, not so much. They're used to working with computers and with drafts and things like that. And I love the civil engineers. They're wonderful people, but they just don't have your skill sets as advocates. You want to rate the quality of the relationship. And it doesn't have to be a high quality relationship. If you remember in my last webinar, I gave you the story of how a dermatologist's daughter's friend's mom went to college with Trent Lott, and a regulation from HHS got overturned in 6 months. Now, I would not call that a high-level relationship. Got a bill passed, so rate the relationship. How trusted are they by the lawmaker? What kind of relationship are they? How valuable is the lawmaker to your cause? This is where I just got into the conversation of Oklahoma versus Texas. By the way, if anybody's on from New Haven, Connecticut, if the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, your Congresswoman, Rosa DeLauro of New Haven, Connecticut, is chairman of the Appropriations Committee. So Victoria, you want to be nice to the person from New Haven because they can be really powerful to you. And how much are they willing to do? How much are they involved? Even a couple of times a year makes a really big difference. Most Americans don't interact with lawmakers once a year. If you get someone that agrees to do it 2 or 3 times a year, you're golden. You got some real powerful assets in your network. And also, as you consider your network, don't just consider the usual suspects. Think of the unusual suspects. When members of Congress see a coalition of people coming to them, they usually are like-minded people. If people are coming here and saying, save the whales, they're probably going to be standing next to the people that say, save the seals. If you come into my office as a member of Congress and you're coming with carpenters and builders, okay, that makes sense. But if you come in with a hospital administrator or a Rotary Club member who might be in a different profession, that's going to get the attention of lawmakers. They love saying yes once and making two group happy. One staffer said it to me this way: I like it. I like people who actually want to know about the staff and don't blindly advocate. When people make a more personal connection, you're more willing and likely to help them. This is all about, connecting with that staffer and that lawmaker. That's Advocacy 201, folks, and that's what you and your network are going to have to do. Now, one of the things you want to do when you think about working with lawmakers, and I referenced this in the last session on the Citizen Advocates Toolkit, is the legislator profile. And let me drill down a little bit more detail, because this is really important into building your network and identifying who might have a connection to that lawmaker. You're obviously going to look at their party position, whether they're in leadership. Key is whether they're on a committee of jurisdiction that is relevant to you and the NAR. You also want to take a look at the relationships of spouses, of key staff, of relatives or peers to that lawmaker who is in their network that might have a connection to your network. Please don't forget researching the spouse. That can be a really important connection to your industry and your cause. And then finally, are there any aspects of their personal life, their religion, the college they went to? I referenced the college earlier in both today's webinar and the previous webinar. Their profession is really important. If they've been in small business or connected to small business, they're going to be probably a little more inclined to be in line with your position. Let's talk a little bit about motivating the network and what you need to do to get them excited about being a member of your network and being involved in the same cause. Consider it this way: look for options. Not everybody is going to be a super advocate and do everything they can. They're not going to take every step on the advocacy involvement staircase, but they might make a phone call, or they might be willing to email a staff member of a member of Congress, or they might go to a meeting in the district, or they might go to a district event, and at the highest level, they might attend a press conference. In my last webinar, I gave you a bunch of advocacy toolkit items that are available to you. And what you want to do is go back to that, think about which of these you're comfortable doing, which of these someone you're comfortable asking someone else to. And by the way, taking a look at 8 through 15, these don't require them to come to Washington, D.C. and to the conference, right? These are all activities that they can engage in the district. And I can't emphasize enough, we talked a little bit about the handouts in your kit that you're getting ready. I can't emphasize enough how valuable it is that your national office has created these kits in a way that really gets the attention of staffers. We did a survey of some advocates that we worked with years ago that went through similar advanced training like this. And then we surveyed the advocates afterwards on what their experiences was. And one of the advocates who went to a meeting filled out a survey and said this: just left a meeting with Congressman blank. He stated the congressman was a supporter. He was blown away and shocked to see a map. He said, this makes it real. Last time I checked, you guys got maps. So keep that in mind. That is a real valuable tool in your advocates toolkit, is having a handout. If you can send talking points or a one-pager ahead of time, that is even better. All right, finally, the last section I want to go on, so we'll get us back on schedule, and I'll be off the air by 3:20 p.m. 10 tips when meeting with a member of Congress. But before I get into the 10, let me just set the context for these meetings you're going to be going to. Members of Congress are incredibly busy people. We did some surveys of members of Congress examining their schedules as well as a comparison. And the average work week when in session is 70 hours a week. The average work week when they're out of session is 59 hours a week. Now, I'm perfectly aware that the most Americans don't think highly of the work product of our members of Congress. This is their work ethic, not their work product. But the point is, they're incredibly busy people. You're going to be part of a day that they're probably going to have 13 meetings on the day that you are meeting with them. So there's going to be 12 other interactions for just the member of Congress. Staff have another, on average, 12 interactions. There's going to be 25 interactions a day. They're usually jammed from about 8 or 9 in the morning. This is a sample schedule that we sanitize so you don't know who we're talking about. But this is a sample schedule for a member of Congress throughout the day. Usually starts around 8 a.m., usually ends around 10 p.m. This is really important. And then finally, before I go into the top 10 tips, I'm actually going to go over something I mentioned in the last webinar, which was what they're looking for in interactions with constituents. You might remember these 2 survey questions that we asked of congressional staff. How helpful is it for messages from constituents to include the following? And how frequently do messages from constituents do the following? And remember, it's information about the impact on the district or state, where 9 out of 10 said that would be helpful or very helpful. Only 1 out of 10 said that they get it frequently or very frequently. Personal story. You heard Victoria say that. It's really important to practice and get your personal story together. And they do want to see the reasoning as well. So finally, just one more point. I didn't bring out my rock star heroine to pitch the value of constituent meetings, but let me bring her on right now. Cokie Roberts, when she was a journalist, was one of the persons that got me involved in terms of just admiring someone on television and radio. And she had a program a few years ago on NPR called Ask Cokie, and she got this question about constituent meetings, and here's what she said.
Well, I love this one that we're going to talk about because we should say both of your parents were members of Congress. And Catherine Bulletin, she wrote this question: what weight do politicians give to phone calls and letters? What's the most effective way to influence our congresspeople? What do you think?
You know, that's actually a terrific question. And the answer is that they give tremendous weight to letters and phone calls from people in their districts. If you send blast emails from some sort of organization or postcards or, worst of all, phone calls, they are not only not likely to pay attention, but they're likely to get annoyed.
Get ticked off.
If you go into a congressional office and there's some phone bank thing going on, you'll see some poor harassed child sitting at the desk
dealing with all the phone calls.
Dealing with all the phone calls.
Welcome to my office. This is your first job.
But if it's somebody who is from the district, and particularly if it's someone who's active in the community in the district, members of Congress pay a tremendous amount of attention to those people. And the truth is, if people from a member's district go to their offices and see that member, it really can make a difference.
If they're active in the community, if they go to their office, they really can make a difference. Isn't that exactly what your program is going to be doing in May? So this proves to you. One last data point before I get to top 10 list. It just proves the value of what this activity you're engaged in. It comes from a survey the Congressional Management Foundation has been asking for 20 years. 5 different surveys of congressional staff, and the same question went like this: if your member or senator has not already arrived at a firm decision on an issue, how much influence might the following advocacy strategies directed to your office have on their decision? And we have been doing this for 20 years, folks, and this chart hasn't changed since 2003. Virtual meetings is something we started adding on. As you saw this, I referenced this in the last meeting. Person who represents many constituents and in-person meeting from a constituent have been at the top of the list in every survey we have done since 2003. And the last survey we took was just 6 months ago, with 98% said an in-person visit from a constituent would have some or a lot of influence. I lied. I got one more soundbite I want to share with you, and that's from Jonah Shumate. He's the Chief of Staff for Congressman Rick Crawford, and he's going to describe a little bit in more detail what they're looking for in these meetings.
Humanization of policy is always good because you get such an abstract idea about how something can be good or how it can be bad. But when you've had somebody who's actually experienced something in a very good way, it helps build, a compelling story and a narrative for keeping a policy or even getting rid of it. The negativity also has the same effect, that if something has been in effect for a long time or going on, there's unintended consequences that you just don't see that comes from just something being in existence. And so being able to humanize something is always a very positive thing.
Okay, big lead up to my top 10 list. Some of this is going to repeat what Victoria said, but that's okay. Repetition is how we learn. Be clear on the goal. Know what you're going in for, what the ask is, and be very specific. Know who you're talking to. Do a little research on the lawmaker in advance and know whether there's a connection to your issue. Know your issue. And I don't mean just reading from the talking points. Staffers and members hate it when they just get people reading off of a tip sheet. They want you to talk about it in local terms, if possible. Connect the issue to the lawmaker's district or state in a meaningful and tangible way. Keep it short. In Washington, most meetings are about 15 minutes long. As Victoria said, you might be finding yourself in a hallway, walking with the lawmakers as going to a vote or to a committee hearing. So you may only have 8 or 9 minutes at most to actually do your pitch. Number 6, deliver the message early on in the first 5 minutes. Never go off message. I know you may be meeting with a lawmaker that you just can't stand, and you want nothing more than to just verbally rip their head off. Resist the urge. I was in a meeting with a business group some years ago when I was working for a United States senator, and they were coming to us with $1 billion problem. And they had this regulation they felt was going to be $1 billion to their industry. And their lobbyist is in the back of the room and the constituents are in the front. And one constituent started the meeting this way. Well, they want us to talk to you about this regulation, but I really want to talk about abortion. The lobbyist just put his head in his hand. And of course, we never met with that group again. They met with staff and never the member. The less paper, the better. One-pagers are great. Emails are even better. Don't diss the help. You don't meet with just staff. Getting that email address of that staff member and having it tied to an issue and to an office is gold. People pay a lot of money for that in Washington, D.C. I know I used to run a company that did that and charged people for that information. So please don't just the help. Building that relationships with the staffer is just as important as building the relationship with the member of Congress. And then follow up if you've got a question and they say, you know, I'm not sure whether or not we are going to be able to co-sponsor this bill or support you. The window is 2 weeks. One staffer says, if you don't follow up, I got to wonder whether it's really an important issue. Finally, with that, we got a few minutes for questions, but before I end it, I said I was going to start with a quote. I'm going to end with a quote from another politician I interviewed from my book called The Citizen's Handbook to Influencing Elected Officials. And I was asking her good groups and bad groups and what worked and what didn't work. And this is what she said to me. It's a great quote. If they come prepared, I listen to them. If they don't, they listen to me. The first group has much more influence. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to Victoria to see if we have any questions that people want to pose in my grand 2 minutes left.
Thank you so much, Brad. As we wait for a few questions to roll in, I wanted to say thank you for addressing some of the don'ts, because I think it's really important for everybody to remember when you're on Capitol Hill, something Brad said that I want to drive home. These folks might seem really young, and you walk in there and you think, oh my gosh, like this is just a little baby taking this meeting, but that person is going to be the chief of staff in 18 months, right? And they might follow you all around the Hill for 25 years. And if you're rude to the staff assistant that's taking that meeting or that's welcoming you and offering you coffee, then it's going to be yours to lose in the future. So just make sure to be incredibly respectful. If you're meeting in the hallway, it's not for your or their benefit. They're not trying to give any kind of subliminal message. They don't like our group or anything like that. There's literally no room on the Hill to meet with as big of a group as usually we bring. And the hallway is bueno because you can all fit there. Or if you're in the cafeteria or wherever you are, it is amazing that you're getting a meeting with the member of Congress in their office. If it's not with the member, it's not with the member. It's not that they don't like you. They just had other things to do. And the staff assistants and the legislative directors, they're usually the most salient on the issues at the time anyway. So if you have questions, they're read in, they're very educated on the issues, and they're the ones walking the members of Congress down to the floor of the House or the Senate and saying, vote yes or vote no. So you really got to make those relationships with the staff. So I just wanted to reiterate that. It looks like we have one last question. Oh, best webinar in years. Yeah, I mean, raise the roof on this advocacy team. We're amazing. We look forward to seeing all of you guys, and Soccer, my wonderful chair. Soccer, do you want to close us out? And before we
Yes, I
go?
do want to close us out, and I do want to ask if you could, Victoria, someone asked to get the One Huddle QR code again, if you could post that real quick, if you have that. I want to close out by saying thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Brad, Ryan, Emily, Joe, Valerie, and of course, the wonderful Victoria Givens, for being here today and making this a really phenomenal meeting. I look forward to seeing you all in Washington, D.C. And as I said, I will help you in any way that I can. I will meet you in the middle of whatever street you're on, if you're lost on the subway, on the metro, and drag you to Capitol South so that we can go into all of the buildings that we need to go to. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in DC. Be safe.
The company ID on One Huddle, the people had a question. It's realtors. For anybody that's struggling with that, the company ID is realtors, all lowercase. Adios.